I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew this is where we were going to flip.
Diving stop to his right. J.P. Crawford, the throw to first, and he got him. Holy smokes, what a play by Crawford.
Straight three, caught, got him.
Out to center again.
Keep carrying, baby, keep carrying.
Goodbye, baseball.
The world has got to take notice of this Mariner ball club.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first official episode of Trident's Up. I'm Max Tanzer, alongside, or I shouldn't say alongside, next to Bohn Jr. here on the screen, but Bohn is across the country from me right now. We're both separated due to the quarantine, but because of that, we're here to bring you guys a ton of Mariners and Major League Baseball content. We're so excited to share our passion for baseball with you guys. There's just so much that we love, whether it's the OOTP series, which is coming up very soon. When the season starts, we have big plans. We want to do pre- and post-game shows, break down games.
Oh, yeah.
And so much. We have, as you clicked on the video today, it's top 10 Mariners of all time. But Bohn, do you have any more words to, what this channel is all about?
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. I mean, it's just really going to be a channel where we're going to be talking not only about the Mariners, although it will mostly be covering them, but all baseball, just keeping it, talking about what's going on around the base paths all around the league. And the Mariners has really been our passion and what has really connected us, through the years. And so it'll be fun. We'll be doing a lot of top tens, as you mentioned, the pre and post game, and I'm sure just some other fun things along the way. And so I'm really excited, as the channel goes on, to see how it develops and the fun content that we have in store for you all watching.
No doubt about that. And we want to interact with you guys, the viewers and subscribers as well, get your thoughts and opinions on everything. We're going to try, and I say try, to get some fun guests as well to join us and talk some baseball, whether it is in quarantine and trying to see how it's going for certain players or employees, waiting for the season to start, or when the season starts and just talking shop, talking baseball. That is just so much fun, and that's what Bohn and I live and breathe. So we have all that coming for you today. But for the actual video now, Bohn, we're doing top 10 Mariners of the last decade from 2010 to 2019. Fits pretty well because our OOTP challenge is from that decade where we're rebuilding the Mariners. In this case, we're going with the real team. And I'm excited because I think we're going to have a lot of similar players, but it's really a difference of who made the 9 and 10 and where you placed everyone. I think those are going to be the two biggest disagreements we have. And I know we put down a couple honorable mentions at first, so why don't we start with you? Who were your honorable mentions, Bohn?
Well, my honorable mentions is a couple guys. I mean, I think that when you get towards the bottom of the lineup of our top 10, it's a little hard. I think it's like up for grabs. And so these are just a couple guys that I think on the really tough years of the Mariners were just some like bright spots or fans to root for. And so the guys that I had on that list were guys like Michael Saunders, Justin Smoak, Fernando Rodney, and Franklin Gutierrez were a couple just of my
I am
honorable
surprised
mentions.
Goody did not make it onto your top 10. I thought he was.
Mhm.
I really
Yep.
thought he was.
It was hard, but I had to be realistic and not make any homer picks.
I love that. Respect. That's why you come to us for your Mariners talk, because we
Yep.
are not homers. But my honorable mentions. So I got one with Gene Segura, Franklin Gutierrez, Justin Smoak, Taijuan Walker, and Tom Wilhelmsen. Thought about Rodney, but I just felt like in Mariners fans' hearts, he's known more negatively than positively. However, one of the best seasons in franchise history by a reliever in 2014. So you can't put that against him. But yeah, so I think we're pretty similar there. Gene Segura was definitely the hardest one to leave off this top 10 for me. And as I get to my number 10, I'll discuss a little bit more how it was a battle between him and the other. But why don't you start off? Who is your number 10?
So the number 10 spot really was all up in the air for, who I was going to give it to. And a big thing that I kind of looked at when we're thinking about players of the decade, if you're a part of this team for a long time, like a mainstay, that I think stands out and helps you become a player of the decade, right? You're just naturally there longer. And this guy, I think was really promising and had some bright moments. But for me, it was Mike Zunino at the number 10 spot. He was our catcher for a long time. He played in a total of 6 seasons. And, with us, he batted 207. So that obviously the struggle is there. But the fact that we had one of the best defensive catchers, I mean, Max, you and I talk about this all the time in that 2012 when Felix was left off of the Cy Young top spot and did not get it.
Oh, and
Part of the
14,
reason
yeah.
was, or 14, excuse me, yeah, was because of Mike Zeno's great defensive play.
Yeah, definitely.
And so Mike, for me, it was really up for grabs. But at the end of the day, I gave him the number 10 spot.
So Mike's on my list, and I
Okay.
guess I fell. Mike Zeno is my favorite Mariner besides Felix of this decade. And so he's a little bit higher for me. I don't know if that's biased or not. I'll save my arguments for later. My number 10 is Gutsy. It's bold. And I'm curious to see what you and the
No
subscribers
way.
think of
I have
it.
an idea about it with that statement. Hold on. Did he play a game in the decade?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not doing 10.
It's not a prospect, is it?
No, that would be terrible. No.
Well, that'd be gutsy. That's what I'm thinking. Is that like,
No, it's not super gutsy, but I almost left this guy off the list. But it's Ichiro
okay.
Suzuki at number 10. And this was very difficult for me, given the fact that he really is known for the previous decade, 2001 and 2009. But a 5-1 WAR in his time with the Mariners back in. He was here for 2010, 11, 12, and then 18 and 19, obviously. Still 512 hits, hit 283. In 2010, secured his 10th straight All-Star game and his 10th straight Gold Glove award. But really for me, it was more of the moments. I mean, as a Mariner fan, I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing when he got traded to the Yankees in 2012. In fact, I was going to that game tonight, and I was devastated. And while it's a negative memory, it was special in a way for me as a baseball fan, and then him getting a base knock in his first at-bat back. The comeback in 2018 was obviously very special, very fun to see. And then 2019, that retirement, it doesn't get any better than that in the Tokyo Dome in Japan. So I don't think statistically he contributed as much maybe as a guy like Gene Segura. But I mean, and some may argue that still Ichiro in 2010 and 11 was better than Segura. But I'll leave that off. That's a different conversation. But I think the moments and the significance of him, especially like the clubhouse too, and how he played a role as a coach off the field, throwing BP to them as well. He was present all that time too. So he's my number.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Ichiro, when I was kind of making this list, I didn't have him in my top 10 nor my honorable mentions just because I don't think he'll really be remembered as a guy that played in this decade. It'll be
definitely
the couple memorable games that he had that were like ceremony-esque games, right? Yep. I remember how big when the Marlins came to town a couple years ago.
Yeah.
How big that
hitting
was.
the home run, yeah.
Right, and then also just his final game at Safeco. Some of you learn about me. I will always call it Safeco. Can't stand the new name of T-Mobile Park, but his last game at Safeco, and then obviously the game in Japan. And I think that while the moments are big, absolutely, for me, it just having a couple of ceremonial games doesn't put him on my top 10.
That's true. And for me, what I really looked at it is when you go back to 2010, if they were to do some sort of recap of the 2010s for the Mariners, Ichiro would still be in that enough for me. You'd have
Absolutely.
the 2,000 hits for the 10th consecutive season, breaking the Mariners' franchise hit record. Then you would have coming back as a Marlin, coming back in 2018, the 2019 goodbye. That's what I mean. It's more of a moments-heavy pick. But yeah, again, another homer one because I wouldn't love the Mariners if it weren't for Ichiro. So, as I said, it's a gutsy one indeed, and I don't know if a lot of people will agree. But these are our list spot. No one can
exactly. It is. I love it. So number 9 on my list, as you mentioned him a lot, is Gene Segura. So I think Gene. I think that you could argue that the trade that the Mariners made to get Gene and Mitch is arguably, in my opinion, a top 3 trade of the decade. Like that trade in my eyes.
I mean, Ketel's looking really good
phenomenal.
over there, though.
Ketel is, and now we have Taiwan back too.
That's true.
But the way that Gene performed, in with us. I mean, obviously it was only two seasons, but he batted 302 in total with us. So over 300, career hitter with us. Obviously only 2 seasons, but still, I mean, you think about how much he contributed in 2018 and just the magical season that was. For me, I think he was a guy that you could always count on. And as soon as I heard that we got him, I was really stoked about how he and D would fit at the top. And so Gene, I think, is someone that I'll always remember as being a 2010 or 2010s decade player. And you could argue too. I mean, he is arguably the best, shortstop we had ever in
Yeah,
the decade.
especially since A-Rod. But, that was difficult for me because he only played in 17 and 18. That's why I left him off. But something else that's special that really could have, made a big impact on my choice for him positively is that final vote run too. That was, brought the fan base together and so forth. But for me, Gene, just there was some antics in the clubhouse that were negative, and
Yeah.
I didn't think he played long enough. And they signed him to a big deal and then traded him, and that's a big negative for me. And I know why they traded him, and I think it's fine. I hope J.P. Crawford's fantastic, but I left him off the list because of that. But no, I respect that. My number 9, this was very difficult for me, but I decided to go with Edwin Diaz, and I wanted to put him higher. But I just thought because he's a closer, and I think there were guys who played more games and were more significant over the long term. But Edwin, homegrown, obviously the story of Jerry turning him from a starter to a reliever, which sparked his career, was a third-round draft pick in 2012. And, I mean, the thing that jumps out to you is the 2018 season with the 57 saves. Broke Rodney's single-season record of 48 in 2014, and then finished with 57, was chasing K-Rod, really brought the electricity to the field. I know you know it. I love it when players, particularly pitchers especially, are screaming on the mound, getting fired up. Felix did it a lot back in the early parts of the decade. Edwin Diaz, every single time, was pounding his chest. He was screaming. That's something I love to watch. And then he was electric Eddie D forever, and that's what I loved about him. So he's my number 9. He's second all time in Mariners saves after just playing, 16, 17, and 18, 3 years. And to be fair, Sasaki only played that amount, or played about that amount of years as well, and is the number 1. But he did it all in a small period, and I'm sad to see him go, but I hope he bounces back this year with the Mets.
Yeah, absolutely. And Edwin Diaz is actually my number 8.
Okay.
And so I thought that just like 2018, I mean, I've told you this many times. This would be the first time for the viewers to hear it. 2018 was by far my favorite season of baseball. It was just so magical. And for Diaz, I think that it was really the first time, obviously since the Rodney season in 14, as you mentioned, that we had seen a lockdown closer, but that we also felt like could be the mainstay closer for
And
our
I'll add on
franchise
to that.
for a while.
With Rodney in a lot of those situations, it was gutsy. You barely hold
It
on.
was.
With Edwin, and there were cases every once in a while where he would struggle, but the Mariners never lost a game that he came in with a save situation. He blew some saves, but they would eventually go on to win it. And he was shut down almost every single time, which was a big boost, especially after a 2017 season that was a little bit difficult for him. But yeah, you gotta love it. And as you mentioned, having a guy that you are confident in the 9th inning is rare these days in Major League Baseball, and it's just that much more valuable, especially for a team that was in so many one-run games like the Mariners were then.
Yeah, and what I felt like was different about Diaz is that you could argue that Mariners fans throughout the decade had never had that. You think about all the different closers that we've had. I mean, from David Ardsma at the beginning to Brandon League and Tom Wilhelmsen, and then Fernando Rodney for a
Carson
bit.
Smith for a bit. Yeah.
Carson Smith, and countless of other guys. I mean, it felt like a carousel of closers that just could not find their success. And then Diaz came in. I mean, even Steve Cishek, another guy on there.
Good for that run in 2016 and then Diaz took over. He was not bad, though. I think people have a narrative in their head that Steve Cishek was horrible as a Mariner. If you look at the numbers, he was not that bad. I know he blew saves, but he was not that bad. But touching the closest ones to Diaz's performance in 18, I'd say was Rodney in 14, and then maybe Brandon League. He was an all-star in 2011. But besides that, you're right. That may be the most dominant relief pitcher, or the most dominant single season for a relief pitcher in Mariners history. In fact, I would say it is, and I don't know if we'll see anything like that for a while. Hopefully we do, but
Yeah.
Okay, my number 8, again, very difficult, but Mitch Haniger. And what I think of Mitch, had played just at least one more season, he would be higher on this list for me, but he only played half the year last year due to the unfortunate injury. But still, in just 316 games, is a WAR of 9.1. /271, 351, 486. And not only is he a great hitter, not only did he have that fantastic 2018 with the 26 homers, 93 RBIs, the All-Star appearance, phenomenal defender. I was disappointed to see him snubbed out of being a finalist for the Gold Glove Award in 2018. Not only does he have a pinpoint cannon for an arm, but will run through a wall for you. So that's so valuable, and I hope he can bounce back and get healthy again and play a major impact for Mariners' future teams to come, because I think he's been forgotten about a little bit because he was gone for basically the entire season last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Mitch, and you will see him show up in my list for sure. But coming in at number 7 for me is Hisashi Iwakuma. I
Okay.
think Kuma gets really underlooked when it comes to really solid Mariners rotation guys. Just because I think, Felix shined very brightly when Kuma was in the rotation. And so kind of around the league, Kuma didn't get looked at too much. Obviously, he did end up making, I believe, an all-star game. Is that correct?
2013, yeah.
13, yeah, in New York. And he was really solid for us. I mean, in 2012, he was third in Cy Young voting and played a total of 6 seasons for us and coming in with a 3.42 ERA. And so that was just incredible stuff. And I think that Kuma doesn't get enough recognition for that. But when you think about Mariners players in the decade, Kuma was there for a long time and did quite well for such a long period of time.
I agree, and you'll see him later on my list as well, so I'll hold my thoughts on that. Coming in at number 7 for me, again, people might give me grief for this one, and I might be biased, but it is Mike Zunino. And again, the longevity, and the story and the moments for him, especially for me, which is one of the reasons why I loved him. First off, starting from 2012, was 3rd overall in the draft, a lot of expectations. Then he was rushed up a little bit after a year and a half in the minors or so. But still, as Bohn mentioned earlier, one of the best defensive catchers in Mariners history. And then the numbers started to click a little bit towards the later part of the decade. Let's start with the 2016 season, I believe it was, when Jerry started him in AAA, called him right back up, hits a couple bombs against the Orioles, plays a handful of games, gets set back down, then comes up for September, goes into 2017. It puts up the best year of his career, at least offensively speaking. The month of Junino is what pops out to me the most. 24 games, hit 304. The OPS was well over 1,000. 10 homers, 31 RBIs. 31 RBIs in the month of June. Finished the season with 64, so that was about half of his RBI total in 1 month. But overall, ended up hitting 251, 25 homers, OPS 840. And then 2018 took a step backwards once again, but is a guy that I really like. The walk-off home runs, multiple walk-off home runs, especially the 2 against the Twins always stand out to me. I went to the game that he walked off the Cubs back in 2013, I believe it was. Always a guy who showed up, a guy who all the Mariners pitchers praised on social media and to the media in person. And I think just because of that was one of the reasons why the Mariners were very good pitching, had very good pitching, especially in the mid part of the decade. So I put him at number 7, even though a lot of people I think will give me grief for that.
Yeah, well, hey, you put it best. These are our lists, and so we get to pick who is on that top 10. And for me, this is someone that I love. Has created a lot of good memories for me. It's Mitch Haniger at number 6. Mitch, I mean, obviously, you mentioned the injury time, but I think that in the later years of the decade was a real bright spot. And for me, I mean, there were so many memories. For me as a Mariners fan, I had gone 7.5 seasons without seeing a walk-off home run live. It killed me. It really killed me. It was something that I had always wanted to see.
Seeing a walk-off, I think.
No. Because it took me 6.5 to see a walk-off.
Okay, yeah, the Nelly one against the Yankees.
Against the Yankees, correct. But when Mitch Haniger, I still remember the game against the Tampa Bay Rays in 2018 like it was yesterday. Sergio Romo was the opener that day, and Mitch he doubled off the wall in his previous at-bat, and then he came up in the 12th and hit a walk-off shot to win it. I remember jumping up and down, and then I got to go to the walk-off on the day game against Anaheim. And just like how special both of those were. Mitch
Anaheim
definitely
one?
holds a special – what?
I was going to say that Anaheim one, I think, would be top 10 games of the decade. We should do that one next. Top 10 games.
Absolutely.
Of the
There we
that
go.
one's
I
definitely
like
in
that.
there. That one's definitely in there.
Just because of the momentum that really brought to the team.
And we'll talk
because
about
Anaheim,
Let's hold it. Next video, right? Don't want to
okay,
spoil
yeah,
everything.
true,
But yeah,
true.
the thing that just hurt me with Mitch a little bit is that he only really played. So he started off 2017 very hot, then got hurt, then came back and played, I want to say about 90 games. I could be wrong. You could fact check me. And then had the full season where it was like 157 or so in 2018, and then played a couple months in 19. So he really played one full season, which is why I had to put him lower on my list. That was just my opinion.
Yeah, and that makes absolutely like a lot of sense. Couldn't agree more with that.
All right, my number 6 is James Paxton, and he was hard to put this low as well. But I think 6 is still, justifiable enough for him. 10-9 WAR, 3.42 ERA, which is tied for first in Seattle Mariners history. 2018, a great year for him when he was healthy, threw the no-hitter against the Blue Jays. 2017, I think, was the big year where he came onto the scene. 16, actually, let's start with 16. Comes on, makes his debut against the Padres, I believe, for an injured Felix taking his place, and struggles a bit. And there's a lot of drama about, if he's in shape or not. And then in Ryan Rowland-Smith's podcast, you guys should definitely go listen to it, he was talking to James, and James was talking about a situation where Scott came up to him and said, look, we're giving you one more shot, and if you don't do well, then you're going to be in AAA for a while. And then James would go out and put up a good 2016. I think the ERA was up around 3.7. 2017 comes out, 2.9 ERA in 136 innings. So this is where we know we finally have that ace, especially with Felix slowly declining. Comes into 2018, and I think on paper should have started opening day, but they gave it to Felix because it's Felix, and he deserves that. And I think James turned into our number one, ended up throwing the no-hitter, and we traded him. But he's been with us for a while, and out of the three-headed monster with Danny Holtzen, Taijuan Walker, and James Paxton, James is the one that worked out the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, never forget. I remember I was so hyped about Danny Holtzen. Sad
Hey,
that
he
that
made his
one
debut
did
with the
not,
Cubs, though, last year.
Yeah, sad that one did not pan out the way we were hoping for. But talking about James Paxton, he is actually my number 5.
Okay.
And I think that you hit it right on the head, just the numbers and the way that he progressed over time. And you talk about, the 3 prospects that we had. Kind of when we were really young fans, we envisioned the 3 of them coming out being our 1, 2, 3 domination in the rotation along with Felix.
And Kuma. It was going to be great.
And
Kuma.
Yeah. It was. It had a lot of potential. And Paxton was really the only one that blossomed the way that we envisioned. And to see him at his full peak, especially with the Maple Grove there too, and them getting excited, that stuff was just unforgettable.
Yeah, no doubt about that. My number 5 is Hisashi Iwakuma. So I think we had them flip-flopped a bit. I would value Kuma over Paxton just because, again, Kuma, I think, put up better years for a longer amount of time versus James was fluctuating between AAA and the majors and was struggling a bit until the later portions of the decade. Kuma had a 17 WAR compared to Paxton's 10.9 in 883 innings, a 3.42 ERA, as I mentioned, tied for first place all-time for the Mariners ERA record. The no-hitter against the Orioles in 2015 was really the highlight of what was an incredibly disappointing season. As you mentioned, All-Star in 2013. Let's read the numbers, Bohn. 2.66 ERA, a whip just north of 1 at 1.006. And that's the 3rd best all-time single-season whip season by a Mariner behind Cliff Lee in 2010 and Felix in 2014. And that led him into the Cy Young voting, finishing 3rd. And I think that's something that people really forget. I know you mentioned it, but a lot of people don't even realize Kuma put up a year to that caliber. So I really would put him up there at number 5. I think he's definitely one of the better pitchers all-time in Mariners history.
Yeah. It really was incredible. And it's sad that I think, as you mentioned, that All-Star, not a lot of people remember that. Not a lot of people, realize how good he was. And so I think it's great having Kuma at the 5 spot. But now I think it's going to be interesting talking about our top 4, because I think that for us, we have, at least I hope so, the same 4 guys in there.
I can almost guarantee it.
In different spots. So for me, my number 4.
Well, let's just say this. We both have Felix at number 1.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt. No doubt.
All right. So really it's just 2, 3, 4, and what order we have them.
Yep. Exactly. So my number 4 is Robinson Cano.
Same here. Beautiful.
Perfect. Okay. This is where I think the 2 and 3 could flip. But before we go there, just to talk a bit about Cano, for us, I think as fans, that was the first time we really got a glimpse of what free agency could be. That was the first
Yeah.
time the Mariners truly made a splash because before that, I mean, we were just used to acquisitions like Casper Wells,
Willie
uh,
Bloomquist, Raul
Willie
Ibanez, I think were the
Bloomquist,
two free agent signings before that.
were the big ones, right? And
Or
those
like
guys were
A Corey Hart
Corey Hart.
who was good,
Yeah.
but like, it wasn't significant.
Yeah, the big acquisition of a power bat was Jack Cust.
Yeah.
That was all we knew. And
Okay,
then
little break here. The highlight of 2014 was when the trade deadline, the Mariners are trying to get a power bat, but at the same time, maybe getting David Price. But we needed that power bat. We'd gotten Kendrys, who had been subpar since being reacquired. And I remember watching MLB Network, and I believe it was Rosenthal, comes on the screen. It says, looks like the Mariners have finally found their power bat. And it's Chris DeNorfia. And I was like, are you kidding me? Chris DeNorfia. Like, that's our power bat. The guy ended up hitting maybe 2 home runs with us
yeah.
since being acquired. And, you could argue in 2014, I know there's the whole drama about Felix in Toronto and so forth. And we kind of fell apart a little bit towards the end. But, like, maybe if we had that power bat in the middle of the order, get some more run support for the best bullpen in the American League, one of the best rotations in the American League, it might have helped. And I didn't think Chris DeNorfia was enough.
Oh, it was not. I mean, Chris was not a power bat. But, I mean, when we signed Cano, it was kind
that
of
was a huge tangent.
No, but I mean, you couldn't have said it better. But like when Cano came in, I think it was the beginning of a culture change in Seattle. I remember after they had signed him, and you and I just talked nonstop about him and how fun that was. And just the numbers that he consistently put up really became the offensive leader of the team, because obviously Felix led the team overall, but Cano was that guy that we really relied on in the middle. And while I love Cano, the guys ahead of him in 2 and 3, I think, just barely edge him out.
I really love Robbie. I think the PEDs really put him
That's a
at
great
number
point.
4
I
for
forgot
me.
to mention that.
But he did finish top 10 in MVP voting. Wow. I cannot say that word. He finished top 10 in MVP voting twice. Was the All-Star Game MVP in 17, which is so cool. I love that. That was amazing. To me, the best year for Robbie was 16. 39 homers, 103 RBIs, the OPS plus at 138, which is the 5th best offensive season according to that stat, behind his 2014 142, which was 3rd as a Mariner. So all the other ones were at the Yankees. So really, I mean, Robbie, we expected numbers that were like MVP candidate numbers, like he put up with the Yankees, but really it was just 2016 where we saw the whole deal, because 14 was great, hit 314 and so forth. But the only year he put the power together and, actually hit, Robinson Cano, New York Yankees-esque, I believe was 2016. And that's why it was a little underwhelming, but he was still very good and incredibly impactful in the clubhouse. So we got to give him that for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I think that right here is where I predict that will be flipped on who our 2 and 3 is. So for me, my number 3 is Kyle Seager.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yep,
I love
Nelly. I knew this is where we're gonna flip, because I know that you love Kyle Seager, and
I love Nelly. And I love Nelly too.
I know. No, absolutely. But I think Kyle, you could argue, and correct me if I'm wrong, is Kyle one of your top 3 favorite Mariners of all time?
Yeah, I think so. Nelly's probably right behind him, but they're very close. But again, Nelly only played 4 seasons with us, 15, 16, 17, and 18.
Kyle only missed 1 season.
Yeah, he came up in 11, so it was basically the entire decade. Up there in the Mariners rankings already in homers. I think he's on 198, which may be 3rd or 4th on the team in history. And again, maybe he didn't make as many All-Star games. Maybe he didn't hit 40 bombs a year or anything like that. But defensively, he was great. I know it goes up and down with him. But still a stalwart at the hot corner, a guy you could always rely on. Generally made all of the unroutine plays too, which was always nice.
Yeah.
And again, going back to 2016, that was his best year. 30 homers, 99 RBIs, finished 12th in MVP voting. But Kyle, again, the longevity. And I, again, think when you think of this decade, you think more of Kyle Seager than Nelson Cruz, in my opinion, just because of how long he's been there. He was there when they were rebuilding. He's one of the only guys that actually panned out, that we drafted and came up in that rebuild. Nelly and Robbie we had to sign. Nelly and Robbie only played half the decade. Kyle the entire decade. That's why he's number 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that makes sense. For me, kind of the big reason why I had Nelly at number 2. Obviously, I mean, the big thing, he was such a wonderful bat. I think that I think he panned out better than Robbie did, in my opinion. He was just
Me too.
really a clutch performer. And the thing for
you
me
could
to
argue
really
he's the best free agent signing of our generation.
Oh, I think that's the
if not
truth,
all time
no
in
doubt.
history.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, Nelly is the leader in home runs in the decade in the major leagues. No one hit more home runs in the entire decade. And for me, I mean, seeing him lead so many stat categories and throughout the decade.
That, 4 of those years,
throughout the
Mariners might have had.
Right, but that's tied for the most with any team in the decade. No, like he spent 4 seasons with Texas.
Yeah, but I'm saying Kyle Seager's entire decade is with the Mariners, and that's what.
Right, exactly.
But go on.
So
I apologize.
It's the question of what ranks higher, longevity or stats. And for me, I think just the way Nelly produced puts him a little bit higher, in my opinion.
And in support of Nelly too, the moment that speaks to me the most is Game 161, 2016.
Unforgettable.
That homer against the A's, tying the game, just snuck out. And he's getting fired up, pointing back to the dugout, pounding his fist in the air. Moment I'll never forget. One of my favorite moments I've ever witnessed in Mariners history. But I'm gonna stop being repetitive here. But I think Kyle put up good seasons just for a significantly longer time for the Mariners. Nelly is definitely a better player than Kyle when you look at their entire careers. Don't get me wrong. But as a Mariner, I think I can more likely see Kyle Seager going into the Mariners Hall of Fame than Nelson Cruz, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know, Kyle played more years, but I think that's how it works. But that's for me. Going to number 1, Felix, no doubt about it. The best pitcher in Mariners history, in my opinion, even better than Randy Johnson. Even though no playoff appearances, it's tragic. But this guy put his heart and soul into this team. Really personifies the team as well, just how tragic everything is, where when they were bad, he was great, and then when they started to get good, he was bad. That's just the Mariners of the 2010s for you, and that is Felix Hernandez. You got to love it. The perfect game, the 2-time ERA leader. 2014 was my favorite season of all time. Then the ultra quality starts as well. 2014 was great. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Those were our top 10 Mariners of the decade from 2010 to 2019. Some disagreements. If you guys disagree, if we missed anyone, if we misplaced anyone, let us know below, and we can have our own conversations about it. For Bohn Crane Jr., I'm Max Tanzer. Thank you guys so much for watching Tridents Up. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.